All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
We're in sync. Actually,
We
it does
can
help
clap.
because I need both of them. So
Yeah.
it is good. All right. So we are back with another episode of the show we don't know what it's called.
Yep.
There's an artist, there's an engineer, there's discussions about art, STEM and art, and then regular pop culture stuff. Or
Yes.
something cultural
It's a
stuff.
father and daughter, and we're yelling at each other about things that we're excited about.
Yes.
That's
Sounds good.
pretty much what it is. Yeah.
Okay. So you're first because you're art, and so the first segment, at least today, typically it will be you leading discussion about art.
Yes.
So what do you got for art?
Yeah. So for art today, we're going to be talking about horror.
Horror.
So, Dad, first question: do you like horror movies?
Do I like them?
Yeah.
I'm trying. I don't know if I enjoy. Well, do I like them? I enjoy them. I'm interested in them. I do like to watch them, but mostly to yell at them when we
Okay.
get to the point where it's like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? That seems ridiculous." And and then yeah. So yeah, like, why are you going down into the dark basement?
Right.
Why would you do what are you doing? Okay, yeah, stuff like
Right.
that. So it's
Yeah.
fun. I mean, it's fun, especially when I do it with you, because we both do that and we're just loud and just yelling at the thing for the stupidity of somebody, or why are you like, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. I think horror films in some aspect have an aspect of entertainment, some humor in there. Maybe not on purpose, but we derive some kind of humor from it.
Yes.
Because yes. So okay. So, but the majority of those films that we like to laugh at, would you consider those good horror films or bad ones?
Probably not good ones.
Yeah.
Although, like, I'm trying to think of the like, not Get Out. What's like Us? Like, there was
Us, yeah,
parts to yell at.
Yes.
But no, but that was actually a pretty good one too, I think.
Yeah.
That was good, except for but we did yell at it too. So
Sure.
we had its moments of yelling.
Sure. Yeah. And so okay, so you enjoy watching horror movies, but sort of for kind of like the
yeah.
opposite effect. Because like I think that like
Well, I don't like to sit there and be scared and like go on, because
you don't like being scared.
I'm
Okay.
not I don't enjoy the scared part, but I
Okay.
enjoy like the tension and then yelling about it.
Okay.
I guess that's
It's the
it's the
tension, it's the
release.
suspense.
The suspense, and then the release of like yelling at it about it. And but this, and this is one thing I hate: the jump scare thing. Like,
Okay.
that's like so like, okay, you got me. I don't, but and I'm not scared of it. It's just like and like, that doesn't take any talent to do that. I don't think.
Okay.
Like,
sure.
because like there was all those YouTube videos where people would just like, what's going on in the thing, and then they would go, and then you're like, that wasn't scary. It's just like shock.
It was startling.
It's startling. Yeah, startling. So it's like, whether it's, I guess you could have a jump scare that's really scary, but usually it's more
Sure.
just startling and not earned, I guess, is what that's like. There's
It's something that comes out of nowhere.
It's not like there's not some tension built up. It's better when they like, like this. I would say the better course is if they bring suspense and then nothing happens, and then it relieves it, and then not right away going into the jump scare, but like later, more unexpected jump scare.
Sure.
Right? I think I don't know if I'm making any sense, but there's just the jump scare thing where you're like looking around and someone just goes, then you're like, well, that was lame, or I got
Sure.
startled, but that was just being startled, not being scared.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So jump scares, they're kind of just there for the effect.
Yeah.
They're kind of just there for the shock value,
Yes.
but not necessarily for the terror value
Yes.
or the part that like really scares you.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yes.
So you had mentioned that jump scares, that is a device that a lot of films in the horror genre will use in order to, I guess, to kind of classify them in that horror genre in that sense.
Sure.
It's that, but also, there are aspects of, horror films and the aesthetic of horror film, including, like the color patterns and like the different shots that they use, the not necessarily the plot, but kind of like the plot arc, those types of things that kind of all go into something that's supposed to be scary. However, I think that there are definitely a lot of horror films that kind of treat it as sort of something entertaining, something funny,
Yeah.
something for viewers to just kind of laugh at, like, oh, so there's not actually anything to be scared of. It's all just goofy. It's like Scooby Doo. It's like, okay, there's something, there's a person under the mask. It's just a person. You're not allowed to be scared of the person. That's it. You're done.
Well, so I would go with like Scream, the original one. That was kind of freaky,
Sure.
scary in that, like, what was going on. But then it was also goofy because because it was just goofy guys that it actually was the guy that later played Scooby, Shaggy, right?
Shaggy, yeah.
So, but that one was, that was scary and funny too, right?
Yeah.
They were and purposefully funny, not like the Friday the 13th ones they were trying to be scared, but then they became comical because it was just like a cartoon where nothing could kill the dude, and that's not that funny. It's or not that scary if the guy it's just shock value, right? I think that's what I would say. There's a difference between like being scared and then just being shocked, trying to shock or startle.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think so what you're kind of alluding to is like horror films to you are more of the shock, use more of the shock value than the actual like scared feeling.
Tension and scare. Tension.
Yeah.
Because like I always go to this one. The scariest movie that I ever saw, and might be because I was like 8 or 9 or 10 or something.
Okay.
But it was When a Stranger Calls. Right. That's the one when like the kid someone keeps calling and said there's this, the have you checked the children? And you're like, it's like a creepy dude keeps calling saying, have you checked the children? And then the lady, the babysitter says, calls the police and says, someone's calling me. Can you come by and help me? There's somebody. And then they're like, the phone is coming from inside the house. And it's like, because there was an old line that was still, active in the house. And that was terrifying. Because like every time because it was a normal situation, right? Someone, you're babysitting and someone calling, and you're like, when I was growing up, we actually had multiple lines in the house, and I used to babysit my brother, and I'd be like, okay. And one time, I think one of my friends, the guy I saw that movie with, one called me and said that, and I was like, don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Because it's a normal situation, and then but something really bad or scary, that was scary.
Right.
Something like that. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So you do bring up a really interesting point there that I want to get into, which is that there's a normal situation and then something weird happens, but it's not necessarily something that's out of the ordinary, like a werewolf jumps out, or like a vampire comes in.
A phone call is normal.
Or it's just a phone call. But making a phone call scary, that takes a lot of elements in order to build that tension. So that to me, which I'm assuming is the same for you, is more interesting and more impressive in horror films like that, where it's like there's a normal situation and it doesn't take some ghoul or ghost or some creepy thing, but just something normal out of the that is very unassuming.
Yeah.
But then it turns into something really scary. Yeah. No, that's that, and I think that is something that I feel like some horror films are kind of missing. It's that realistic kind of aspect of it, where it's like something could happen, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's like this seems like something ordinary, but then like there's something unordinary behind it, but you just can't realize it because it's so ordinary. You don't think about it. Yeah, and I think that's where like a lot of that scared feeling might come from. It's something that you can relate to more, rather than just watching
something bad happen to people. Or weird
but like
things.
it's like a Ouija board.
Yeah.
Like, of course that's not real.
Yeah.
That's why it's easier to laugh at it, and so it's easier to be entertained by something like that, because that's not realistic at all. That would never happen. And so therefore, like you're saying, it's easier to get mad at those people. Like, hey, if y'all don't realize that this is stupid, this is not. You guys are being stupid. You guys don't. But also, like, this is a completely unordinary thing. So who knows how they're supposed to react to something like that? So of course they're going to do things that are stupid.
Yeah, that's true. If it's such not typical situation that acting stupid is fine because nobody would be in that situation anyway.
Exactly.
But the answering of a phone, you're like, yeah, no one would just randomly pick up the phone and throw it across the room unless, like that's not a normal well, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something
Anyway,
like that.
something
Yeah.
like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so right, and so that's kind of like in the horror film genre. But what I kind of want to talk more about, now that we've hit the nail on the head on the whole turning a normal situation scary, ordinary becoming unordinary, we're talking about horror graphic novels and comics.
Okay.
Because there is this Japanese anime artist that I'm sure a couple people have already heard about right now, called Jung Ito. It's really funny because I first found out about him because I watched the Netflix anime adaptation of like a bunch of his short stories, and it was awful.
Okay.
It was really bad.
Because it didn't have because it didn't, like you talked about just now, it wasn't didn't feel like normal situations that were scary, or because it was just what made it bad? Like,
Yeah, so what made it bad was like it felt like it was just trying so hard to be scary. But there were certain things in like the plot and like the way that people would speak to each other where it didn't flow well. There were cuts to scenes that just didn't work, and overall, like, also just the aesthetic and like the way that they drew the characters and the way they like animated them just made them seem goofier, not really anyone to take seriously. And there's a lot of characters that like you see come up like every once in a while, but then they don't really dive into their character. There's no character development there. And it's like, okay, what is this? Like, this clearly does not work for a TV series or an anime or whatever. So I was like, okay, I wonder what the manga is like, what the original manuscripts were for this. And so I read them. I found them at a library. And I read, I think it was Uzumaki, Gyo, some of his larger volumes like that, and then a couple of other short stories in there. And I realized that what worked in Junji Ito's original stuff was never going to work in the realm of TV and in the realm of like film.
Okay.
Because the reason why there is very little character development is because with Junji Ito's work, it's very not character based. It's very plot based. It's very just okay. It's environmentally, it's setting based. There's other things that you should be paying attention to. But in something like film or TV, where there's usually somebody that you're following because it's animated that way or because the camera's following them, then you're kind of drawn to want to find out more about them. But when you're taking something from like source material like Junji Ito, where you don't follow that character, but you're trying to adapt that into a series, it's not going to work. It's not going to be the same. So that was like something that was one thing that I figured out. Another one is the art style. It's the art style his like 2D illustrations versus art style in animation in anime. And it's that his work is like, I'm sure we can pull up some images that we'll find later on for this, but his work is so grungy and it has a very specific aesthetic, but they only really, I feel that they only really work in still images. They work as one singular thing, one singular image that you're looking at. Because if it was moving, if there was anything else outside of that, then it just wouldn't feel the same.
It takes away from what he's trying to convey, right?
Yeah.
A single image conveys one thing, but if you have it moving through, it's like, yeah, I see what you're saying. If it's like animated, like there's movement and there's other things, so you're not focused on the same thing that he was focused on, but in a single panel.
Sure. Right? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so the problem with the anime did was they tried to do that. They tried to put in like some still images of those really horrifying drawings that Junji Ito did, where whether it was like they would reveal something bad that happened to a character, and then it would just be them, and
But
then
it
like,
looks weird then.
but it just looks
It
strange,
doesn't,
yeah.
because you're like, you're not used to an animation. Once it's something on the screen that's animated, if they
Yeah.
stick on a still frame, that looks weird. That
Well,
doesn't look
yeah.
right. That doesn't look like it's part of the like the flow, normal flow of a movie or a
It's like they were moving just like a couple seconds
Yeah.
before, and now all of a sudden they're not.
yeah. That's like an old 1950s kind of cartoon thing where they they just stop on a frame because
Yeah.
or move the frame around, but don't actually move. Like you can tell they're just
Yeah.
because they don't have the skill, technical ability
Sure.
to animate the whole thing. So they just
Yeah.
take a single image and then just pan around it, which is
Yeah.
kind of a weird thing to, like it looks weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that's another one. And then and then another huge thing is there are like, I mean, like, I'm not necessarily criticizing the anime as just a TV series. I'm kind of criticizing it in terms of like what it was trying to adapt from
Okay.
the graphic novel. But the thing is that the things that you can express in any genre, whether it be horror, romance, whatever, the aspects or the tools that you can use for that are limited to whatever materials or mediums that you were using. And so in film, like I feel that they have more lucrative or like more just a broader expanse of options to use in order to do storytelling that graphic novels can't necessarily. But what the beauty of graphic novels is that it's something that you're sitting down, you're reading, you're flipping a page, and that is a really big aspect of Junji Ito's horror graphic novels that really work in the format that he's doing it, because you're turning the page and then all of a sudden something scary happens and you're like, whoa, it's like really effective that way. But whereas in like a TV series, if a jump scare was to happen, or you're
not the
or
same
you're supposed
effect.
to flip the page,
Yeah.
like what? Well, how is that going to work
Yeah,
out?
I see.
But normally, what'll happen is like there's a character, and then like the camera pans in on their face, and it's shocked, and then it immediately turns into the next scene, and then you're like,
Which is a very different feeling than
very
between
different.
the two. Like
Yeah.
like I could see what you're saying, that those don't necessarily translate. Like how do you convey the same whatever feeling, emotion, whatever you want to call it, but the same, how do you translate that page flip to shock to like to an image on or a moving image that goes from one thing to another in the same, it won't ever feel the same because
Yeah.
it's a different interaction with the medium, because
it's a different interaction between the viewer
Yeah.
and whatever the medium is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because like if it was like, I'm just thinking, if it was really scary, like you're there, like, do I really want to turn the page or do I not? Right. And you're like, and then you go, whoa. But in
Right.
the thing, in the animation, you have no control over it. It's just gonna go from that one scene to the scene that's shocking or whatever.
Right.
And so you can't, like, you could build a different interpretation or different internal feeling based on whether you want. Yeah, I'm like, what if I just go like? It also might detract from it in that, like, you're like, oh, it's gonna be scary. I got to go to the bathroom, and then you come back and you won't have that same tension. You might have
Sure.
lost that tension.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Versus, and so you can play different ways. But if aside from that, like taking a break from something, if you're there, you get to have more control over how much tension you're willing to build or
Right.
not.
Well, yeah. I think that's an important aspect of just graphic novels, books, comics, whatever. It's you're giving autonomy to the viewer. They're the person that's kind of in control. Like whereas in film and media and TV shows, it's like, okay, somebody else is conducting this story. Also, somebody else is conducting their imagination or their interpretation of something. And so whatever you're supposed to like if you're reading something and there whether there's images or not, you in your head are coming up with the characters' voices, the the sounds that like are being described, the feeling, or like just you're visualizing it on your own. But then in a film, there's already a set kind of setting. There's a set visual that you're supposed to just take in. Like, okay, that's them. So there's not really much that you can interpret visually or something to interpret like imaginatively. But I think there's other things that you can interpret, like plot wise, character wise, like all those things. Like those are the things that you would be drawn to interpret, and therefore, Jung Ito anime wouldn't work because again, you're interested in the characters, the plot, whatever. But Jung Ito doesn't focus on character like that.
The other, thinking along those lines, like one of the biggest things for a movie, right, is sound. And so,
Yeah.
like I don't know, like there is no sound obviously in the manga, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
how you translate that feeling and atmosphere, like it's two different mediums. It's like I can imagine that like that translating those two things is just not even in the same realm, because like if you wanted to have his stuff if you wanted to do horror, it would take a whole different set of skills and different a different workflow and a different understanding of the medium if you wanted to do horror in anime, because
Yeah.
then you would use all the atmospheric sounds, and you would use the way that you would set up things would be completely different. And so I don't know, it would, he might be able to do it. I don't know how, if he had control over how the anime went. I don't know if he directed it, but it would take a lot of skill to be able to translate, even he being the original author, translating from one medium to another. You would have to almost have that in mind, when you're writing the stories.
Yeah, I don't think that he was
Too involved
like
in it?
a major
See that
component
would
of it,
be,
which makes sense.
yeah, but that would be really hard, I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh,
so
absolutely.
so my question to you is, like, how does that apply to your art? As you, like, do you take away, is there lessons that you can take away from that? Because you don't do manga, and so you don't have the page
No.
flip. So what do you can you apply anything of what he, like, of his work to what you do? Or is there, like, what lessons do you take away from this anime versus manga thing that we just discussed?
Well, I mean, it makes me I don't really take anything like direct from his work, like any, like not nothing horror, nothing like whatever, like his characters. I don't take like direct designs from it. I don't take direct influence from that. But as far as the discussion of what concepts are most strongly conveyed through certain mediums, that is something that I think about a lot. So I think more, I mean, obviously I think about the mediums that I use when I'm painting or drawing, what I'm painting or drawing, and then how I'm going to be able to skill wise, but also conceptually bring about like an art piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't. Yeah. I. You'd have to explain that. I kind of understand what you're saying, but I don't really understand what you're saying, because I don't know how you would like how you conceptually take the things from his. I don't know what takeaways you actually have that you could apply to yours. So that just confuses me.
Okay.
Do you have a concrete example of like what?
So yeah, I was gonna get to that. So yeah, so in a lot of Jung Ito's work, it's like specifically in his illustrations, there's a lot of cross hatching. There's a lot of there are like certain techniques that he uses in order to create this sort of aesthetic.
Okay.
And I myself have done like cross hatching kind of like things, and done that with some of my own illustrations, but it's not the cross, but I realized like none of my work ended up being like horrific or anything scary or grungy, so it wasn't necessarily the I found by doing that it wasn't the cross hatching that was necessarily the part which I had previously thought was the reason why it was scary. But it was something completely different that I'm still trying to figure out. But it's yeah, I think a lot more about, you know, not just the medium that I use, but the techniques that I use using those mediums, and how and what sort of feelings those evoke. Like for instance, if I was to use watercolor, there's like you know, when you think of watercolor, like you think of like, you know, something calm, something kind of like smooth, you know. There's
I think
and
of
then like
spring.
there you go. See, yeah, you kind of have these like preconceived notions of like how that medium applies to
Yes.
certain
Yes.
feelings. However, if I'll probably find another image of this. Junji Ito has made watercolor paintings of his characters, and they're still terrifying.
Okay.
So
But what? So then
it's yeah.
what you're trying to do is figure out what about his use of the medium makes it terrifying.
Yeah.
Okay, but you don't know that yet.
No.
So
I mean, I'm
so
still
you're
figuring it out.
so
Yeah.
like also so the original example of cross hatching, it's not the because cross hatching doesn't necessarily make something scary, but the
No.
way you use it can make things creepy.
Yeah.
And so how so then that's it's like a so you're there's technique that
Yeah.
you
Because
can to
like
convey different emotions.
yeah. So I'll give a little more clear example of like the cross hatching thing that I'm referring to. Like I can make a portrait of somebody and use the cross hatching technique. I and so just so people understand, cross hatching is a method that you use and you mainly using like pen and ink and stuff like that to create shadows without having to shade or like to add, you know, gradient necessarily, because it's pen, it's kind of hard to do that because
Yeah,
it's
because
a
smudging would
permanent
actually
thing.
smudge. It wouldn't look. It
It just
doesn't
wouldn't
look
look
like.
pretty.
It doesn't look like blending. It looks like smudges.
Yeah, it just doesn't look right. Yeah, smudging would work for pencil and graphite and other softer mediums like that, but pen, because it's liquid and it's alcoholic based, that's very different. Yeah, and also it depends on like the pen width, like all that kind of stuff. And so I can make a portrait of somebody and I can use like all the shadings, right? But what Junji Ito will do in a portrait is he'll add you know, he'll use cross hatching to accentuate certain aspects of a face to make them scarier. So he might add things like to a cheekbone to make it look more like a skull. He might add things under the eyes to make it look like the person's tired or they're exhausted or there's something that's like bothering them or freaking them out. Like, and then of course he has like some obvious like imageries, you know, in his work that like showed like genuine horror and like, yeah, of course it's scary, but it's the placement of the cross hatching. It's how much is used, how intense it is, you know, like yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's a lot of art. Wow.
That's a lot of art.
No, that but
So-
that's
so that's stuff for you to
that's
think
yeah,
about.
that's interesting. That I don't know how it applies to anything in my world, but
Sure.
but yeah, no, that the idea that this technique can be used, this like even like you say, the kind of like watercolors, if just feel like normally just feel like calm, like you said, calm, peaceful,
Yeah.
some
You
springtime.
said spring, yeah.
And then to use that in, you know, like what how yeah, like we'll have to find an image that shows
Yeah, I'll show you,
using
yeah.
that, you know, a medium that typically is calm and stuff, and but then using it to be horrifying. Now onto the STEM and art question,
Oh
the
no.
section. All right, so we just watched I will put a link in the description below.
Oh gosh.
No, we just watched a couple of YouTube clips about AI generated art. One was a painting and one was a
Photograph.
which he called a promptograph. But these two AI generated images, because that's what they are, AI generated images, one art contest, one in a general art contest and one in a photography art contest. Your feelings, go.
My feelings. Well, when we were watching it, they were one person in particular. I think it was the painting guy, who explained that, oh, AI, that's just another tool that artists use. Like artists have tools. AI was my tool.
Okay. What do you? Does that not resonate with you?
Which, like, I mean,
I want to hear this because we've also talked about like photography.
yeah,
Every photograph now at this point goes through Photoshop, and so
Yeah.
they've been digitally altered.
sure.
Are they still
yes.
photographs?
Yes, technically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
So,
if he's just running an image through his voice or his language, lingual interpretation of what he's visualizing, is that not art?
yeah. And so, okay, so I'm kind of, I was going to use photography as an example because you are using a machine that is doing something for you. You're clicking a button and it's taking a photograph for you. Are you doing the photograph? No, the camera technically is. But you are the one behind the camera and you are making the camera doing the thing that it is doing.
Yeah, you set up what you're photographing.
Yes.
You're choosing the time of day. You're choosing the direction that your camera is pointing. You're choosing the angle at which the camera is pointing. You may have filters or something that you place upon the camera, so you have
Yes.
a lot of control over it.
You do. Yes. And so, as far as the AI art goes, I mean, like, yeah. So if I was to use that same thing with like the camera, and the person behind the camera with AI, so somebody is inputting data or they're coming up with different words, phrases, whatever, and putting them into this thing, and it is creating an image for them.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, they are, so like I said, it's like the photograph. It's like a camera taking a photograph.
Uh-huh.
The artist is the photographer is not actually taking the photograph. It's the camera that's doing it.
Okay.
In that sense.
Okay.
And so if we're talking mechanically here, like technically, like, yeah, the camera is taking the photograph, not the artist.
Okay.
The artist, so the AI art generator is generating the art, not the artist. And so, however, like I had said in the example, you can't, obviously that sounds insane. Like a camera can't take a picture on its own. An AI art generator can't generate art on its own. It needs something or somebody or things for input to happen.
An artist.
An artist.
Okay. So is that person that's talking giving a prompt into the AI an artist?
So Dad, let me ask you this. What is the definition of an artist? What is an artist?
What is an artist? I honestly, I don't know. Well, how would I know? I'm not an artist. I'm an engineer. I know an engineer is someone who uses, processes and we define processes and techniques for building products or building something or design. Yeah, for typically building something, because even if you go from software to buildings, right? There are engineers involved in those, and there's a process where you come up with an idea, you validate, you execute, you validate again and then it's finished, something along those lines. So an engineer does defines and executes on those processes.
Kind of sounds like an artist thing.
Okay, so then is it the output that defines whether you're an artist or not? Or am I an artist because engineers have define a process and get into an output? Like, what's the part that makes you an artist or not?
Here's the thing. Right. So the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of an artist is a person who creates art, such as painting, sculpture, music, or writing, using conscious skill and creative imagination.
Okay, so they create art, although that is kind of circular.
Yes,
but that person would be an artist then who who talked into the AI because they generated something using creativity, conscious
skill, and creative imagisation.
Yes.
So yes, in a sense,
typing in into a prompt to get an image in the way he wanted it was artistic.
Yes. In a sense.
In a sense, yes. So do you have do you have a break, or where does that break down somewhere for you, this whole discussion? Or because do you want to say he's not an artist? Is there?
Obviously, there's a part of me that wants to
Okay.
say it, and I think that's coming from my experience slash bias as a traditional artist.
Sure.
I think
But so then would you say someone who is a digital artist would have less problem with considering him an artist?
that's not what I. No, that's not even.
I'm
No,
okay.
no. The only reason why because I feel that as as an artist who primarily works in something two-dimensional, something that is very hands-on, I take a lot of pride in that hands-on work and the actual like physical creation of doing something. I like using my hands and having like myself connected to my art because I'm actively doing something. I'm in front of it. That's my relationship with art, and that's how I see it. There are other types of artists, such as this AI generator person, who is, in a sense, I at least in my perspective, is kind of disconnected from the art. They're putting in their own little ideas. They're not actually doing anything really. That's just what it looks like to me. They're putting in words and data, and then they're choosing like
One of the variations, and then refining on it. Yes.
Yeah, and refining it. Sure. Which, like, okay, cool, you do that. That to me, it just that's just not an art philosophy that I personally agree with. So.
Okay, that's fair. And so I would say that the thing that he is generating, like you're talking about, like photography is a different thing than painting, right?
Yeah.
They're both images.
Yes.
How you generated them is different.
Yes.
Therefore, they're different types of art.
Yes.
So this is
It's the process.
This is another category of art then.
Completely.
Then
Well,
I
yeah,
would not
because the process is completely
Yes.
different.
So
Than
I would
what
not
we're,
like if you want to say if you go into a general art show and you say overall whatever, right? If you wanted to,
Yeah.
this could compete if it was a sculpture, painting, photography, AI generated art, whatever show, and there was a category, the overall thing, I would say that this belongs in it. If you say that it's somehow painting or something, I don't even know what so we didn't look at it. I don't know what category this thing won for. If it just said art show, state art show, then
Yeah.
sure, it could win, right? I don't have a problem
Yeah.
with that. But here's the thing that and this is from you and the things that you've taught me,
Okay.
right? This thing can't convey a lot of the things that you've taught me about art, because an actual hand-drawn, and this is why I understand why you don't like digital art, because it's like that's not your thing.
No,
This would not be your thing. You could say you could concede that these are art, but these are definitely not your thing, because the way that you do the crosshatch, this guy doesn't even have control over how the crosshatching goes.
Right. Yeah.
You would control the crosshatching, the width, the pressure by which you do it, like what effect that actual interaction with the paper has. Like you could affect the depth at which the pen or pencil is interacting with the paper. Like you could have a deeper impression or less impression, and that could mean something. Just like when you talk about painting, like the brushstroke, the actual brushstroke can mean something. The depth of the paint itself can mean something. No AI art is going to have any depth of paint.
Yeah.
Until we talk about the robot painter, but that's something different.
That's yet
another one. But the generative AI where you speak prompts and you get an image, there's that image even if you print it, is not going to have convey the same kind of meanings that a paint on canvas can have.
Same type of emotions.
Or
feeling,
emotions,
or whatever.
meaning, whatever, but meaning even, right? Because like I just was going through, like the layers, the how much paint layers and which paint layer goes on top of the other paint layer, means something, right? At least that's from what what I understand from you.
Yeah, well, that
right?
yeah, that is just what I believe as an artist in my practice.
Yeah.
Like whatever decisions that I make artistically, like have some sort of intent behind it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Techniques and things have meaning more than just the effect that they have on the page.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So the technique, their technique is prompt. Their technique is not the actual interaction with the final image.
Yeah.
So okay,
That's pretty much yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what is our takeaway from this? Is it that it is art or it isn't art? It is like
I think it is. It's art in some senses. It's not art in other senses. I think so as far as if we're getting specific here, I think technically it's art. You know, it like that guy when he said that this is a tool that artists are using. He's right, technically. Yes, it is a tool that he is using. He is inputting his own ideas into it. He's like a photographer setting up like the scene, and then the AI generator is like the camera that he's clicking, and it makes the thing. Okay, sure. However, like you're saying, it because it's just an AI generated image, it's something that's created using ones and O's and like whatever database that they're using. There's a lack of humanity in it. And that lack of humanity is something that I feel is absolutely necessary in art because, well, that's how it was made from the beginning. People made it. People are making it, and people have their own experiences and their own perspectives. Whereas an AI, technically, like doesn't an AI basically have like access to pretty much everything?
it has access to all like a huge library of images, and then it like takes it can categorize them, and then it takes from those things and mashes them together in a way that
Okay, cool. We can't do that.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And so therefore the art that we create is completely like you said, completely different ballpark than an AI art would.
But you are influenced by art that you've seen. So in some ways,
yes, in a sense, sure, but not that broad.
True.
You know, not that broad, and not that not super like pick and choosy.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, because they do that all the time. All right, everyone does. Draw the Mona Lisa in the style of Starry Night, right? And then it comes up with a combination of Mona Lisa and Starry Night, and you're like, okay, that you can do that, and people are like, ooh, that's that's amazing, and artists will be like, that's really goofy.
Okay, that's why would you want to do that?
Because
well, it's like it also brings into question like what this art. I always want to get into this. The artist's statement.
Yeah, what are you trying to convey? The artist's
intent. Like, what is he? So I'm wondering if he was actually trying to say something using that AI art.
Oh, this is your
using
thing.
The actual subject of the AI art. Or if he was just making a meta statement about how AI art can be considered art.
Or the final one, the worst one, it was cool.
I did it because it was cool.
Yeah, I wanted to make an image that looked cool.
And it got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It's that too. That's another big aspect. It's like, are you doing that because you want news to cover you, or are you?
Well, that one other guy, the one that won the photo contest, the AI photography that he created and entered into the photography contest and won. Yeah. He didn't want to win. He just wanted to spark the question of whether AI generated photographs are photographs, or what are they, what should they be classified under. He wanted to have that conversation. So in my mind, my weirdness of understanding art, I would go with his art was starting that conversation. Yes. The art wasn't the image that he created. The art was the act of creating it so that he would start a conversation. That was his intent. Yeah. His intent was the conversation. Yeah. And he actually failed at that because nobody had the conversation. Nobody wanted to have the conversation with him. So in some weird way, he failed at his art, even though he succeeded at winning an art contest for AI photography.
I mean, he's technically succeeding with us. We're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying. I don't mean he's a complete failure, but he didn't have the large impact that he wanted because the people that judged the contest never even asked him. So that was the people he was trying to get. I mean, yes, I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm sure he's
Yeah.
glad that we're having this conversation.
Oh yeah, he's probably watching this like, yeah.
No, but no, but you know what I mean. He as an artist,
Yeah.
you want his intent was to have this conversation, and he sparked it at least with amongst us.
I mean, yeah. I mean, in a sense, yeah, that's what I want to do with my art as well. I do want to spark conversations with them, but I don't want it to be my art or like the act of the art or whatever, like something about the art. I want the actual subject of the art or like whatever to be the sparking of either, whether it's conversation, just something thought provoking, whatever, feeling provoking, whatever. Yeah,
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from, but it's the I'm just going with the way that potentially other artists could. It's the whole like your classmate that made NFTs ironically so that to go to be anti NFT by creating NFTs or something
and then profiting off of it.
and yeah, and the evils of profiting off of your art by profiting off of your art. That's just like yeah, that's
that one
like
I didn't know what
that's
it
like
was, yeah.
yeah, that's like silly college level irony or like that, yeah, whatever. So
Yeah.
sorry. But yeah, that's
man.
all that is an I think that's a topic we'll come back to
Absolutely.
as far as like what is art, and where it intersects with technology and things
Yeah.
like that, and what makes art
Yeah.
art.
What defines an artist's tools?
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah. We'll definitely talk more about that.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Yay.
So now last segment is
Pop culture.
pop culture.
Yeah.
All right. So,
So-
what do you have for me? Do you have something
'cause
for me?
You had Riz
Yeah, I
last
had
time.
Riz.
That was
I had Riz. Sorry.
No, he doesn't. He's been married for what, 27 years? Yeah, no, that's he hasn't. He might have had it at one point,
No
but he
Riz.
doesn't anymore because he doesn't need
No
to
Riz
use
for
it.
dad.
You don't need to use it
Okay.
anymore. So
What do you got? What pop culture thing do you have?
So we have this new, okay, well, not necessarily new, but it came out earlier this year. The show Beef.
Oh, Beef
on Netflix.
Oh, okay. Yes, Beef.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking.
Yeah, so you and I watched it separately.
Yes.
Because I was away in college and you were at home. And the like I think it was like the minute I finished it and mom was texting me like, hey, what are you up to? I'm like, oh, I just finished this really weird show called Beef. She's like, oh, dad just finished it. I'm like, oh, and I called you immediately. I was like, okay, what do you think?
I don't even remember what I thought at the time. What are your thoughts on it? What are your big thoughts around it?
Well, big thing. Okay, well, first of all, it's so I'm kind of going to be alluding to like some of the things that we had previously talked about, which that's why I'm bringing it into this because it all strings along, it all connects.
Okay.
So so like we had discussed before, like there's some art that is created, and the statement is just the art itself. So I feel that there are a lot of like TV series, films, and like a lot of media and a lot of art in that realm that is just about film or about movies or about whatever. For example, Nope. That was a big one, and it was a really well done film. But it was kind of like meta modernist in the way that it was like we're like film is awesome, but there's like the spectacle aspect of film that's that can be harmful.
Yes, but see, that's the thing, right? We talked about this too. Nope, for someone who just was watching the movie, could have been like, this is really goofy, right?
Yeah.
Whether we were overdoing it or because we were trying too hard, but
Sure.
you and I came up with this concept of that it was about spectacle and
Which it was, yeah.
and like using of like non-human actors and how
Yeah.
you turn them into props and how
Yeah.
they can go wild, right? Like the
Yeah.
monkey and the Nope creature thingy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so it's kind of that feeling that that Nope feeling of like there's something meta going on. Yeah, that was kind of the vibe that I got from watching Beef. because it was so absurd.
Yeah. So
It
no,
was so absurd.
that completely makes sense. Like it had to, because it was like the story itself was so goofy that
There was no
that it
way.
had
Yeah.
to have a higher meaning, or else it was
Yeah.
just, why did you even make this?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the higher? What did you get as the higher meaning, or you have some other avenue?
So I'm gonna try and figure that out as I'm talking about it, because like, I mean, like, so the premise of it, it's absolutely absurd. It's, two Asian Americans from different ends of the social class spectrum, and they have a road rage incident, and then instead of just letting it go, it turns into obsession and stalking each other. Great. That's ridiculous. That would never happen. That's completely unrealistic, and it's insane. How, however, there is that, while it is kind of unrealistic, it's also not. It is realistic. Like, so Jung Ito, that this is what I'm going into. Like, something normal turns into something abnormal.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
completely like, okay, what, like, how far can you push something, Okay, but then it's also, okay, why are you pushing it? Why are you making it such this giant spectacle? Why is it this huge thing that it could have been solved so much earlier? Why is it a thing? Yeah, which, like, I tried so hard to understand it. I rewatched it recently because I was like, okay, what am I missing from this? Because all I got was two angry people, and then they ruined they tried to ruin each other's lives, and then in the end ruined their own lives. So
Well, so the thing that I got out of it, right, at a meta level, like above the whole thing, right?
Okay.
What I got out of it was these two people, like, just would not admit that they were wrong at anything,
Yeah.
right? That they, like, the whole thing, like you say, the absurdity of the whole thing is like they did all kinds of crazy stuff just so they would never have to admit they were wrong.
Yeah.
And they would lie about everything, and they would go like make like change their lives, change the story about everything just to show that they were good people that didn't do anything wrong. Like the
Yeah.
like the dude, I don't even remember the people's names, but the dude was
Yeah,
like,
that guy.
he built his parents' house because he was also a handyman, but he put in the wrong gauge wire, and that's why the house burned down. But
Yeah,
he would
but
not
he immediately-
admit to his brother that he put in the wrong wire.
So instead, he turned it into, that lady that,
Yeah.
that almost ran me over. She definitely caused that.
She burnt the house down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. However, there's kind of like a little plot hole in that, because he didn't realize that was what it was, like, at first. They didn't tell him until later.
No, but once he knew, he kept up the pretense that it was not his
that's true.
fault.
Never
Right?
mind,
That's
yeah,
what I'm
that's
saying.
true.
Is that every turn, it was never his. He always had to look good. I mean, he even threw away his brother's application to colleges because to make
that
himself
was
look
messy.
good, right? It was always
Yeah.
about him. And then she had all kinds of things to make herself look good.
Of course,
Or she
yeah.
lied about, selling her thing and what all the other interactions
other
that she
stuff,
had.
yeah.
So it was all like, that was the meta thing. I mean, if you go at the highest level, for me anyway, that was like, that was the whole thing.
Yeah. They couldn't admit they were wrong.
And so they just caused chaos because they could not admit their
and I think they also just let their anger get the best of them. That was a big motif,
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, they did always let their anger get away with.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, but so in some circles, it was all a big deal because why?
Because Asian people are in a TV show, because Asian representation.
Yeah,
Yay.
and
But yeah.
Okay, so you know what? So the thing that what does Asian representation typically mean?
Like, are we talking like my definition, or like what everybody else thinks it is?
What? I guess go with yours first. What is your idea of Asian representation?
I mean, it just based on what I've seen and what I think just the overall consensus of it is. It's, you get to see somebody of Asian descent in a film or doing something big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do the same. That's largely it for me. But I'll go the one extra thing is it's largely Chinese. Sorry to say
Yeah.
it. I mean, I'm gonna like it's always from a Chinese perspective because yes,
It is.
Chinese are probably the largest of the Asian segment that people call Asian. Like, and I, like us, I always say I'm not Asian. I do not consider myself Asian because like
No, neither do I.
the four, the major Asian cultures, ethnicities,
Yeah.
Japanese, Korean, Chinese,
Chinese,
Filipino, whatever,
Filipino.
like Vietnamese. None of those ethnicities have anything in common. Like
No.
no language, customs, no, none of like what do we have other than once again what is this racist thing? It's we look alike. It's so racist to call us Asian because that's the only thing you have in common. It's just it's like
Well, yeah, that's why Indians aren't called Asian.
yeah, because anyway, that's my beef with the Asian term is
Beef.
yeah, sorry. The thing I do not like about the Asian term is that there is so little that ties us together. Even our history within the United States as immigrants is completely
yeah.
different.
Completely
like there has
different.
been Japanese immigration has not happened since World War II. There's been
Yeah.
because Japanese didn't need to immigrate. Like Chinese and other ethnicities needed to immigrate because they had more opportunities coming from their countries to come to America.
Yeah.
Japan was like that's when the biggest growth for Japan was. So they had no reason to immigrate to the U.S. I mean, there's some like our cousin, but his wife.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
but by and large, there's not much Japanese immigration because they have a first world standard of living that they didn't need to immigrate to the U.S. for.
Right.
Right. So they're like we're of Japanese American, you're fifth, 4.5, whatever, 4.5, 5 generation.
One of those,
fifth generation. But there's no first generation. There's no, first and second generation Japanese Americans that we know of. I don't know. I know of none. And so, yeah, so to group us as Asian always, it's not my favorite thing.
It's not, yeah.
But so I have a beef with beef.
Yeah.
Oh, this made me so mad. Is because the half Japanese, half Chinese little granddaughter goes to her Japanese grandmother. And what does she call her? Do you remember what she goes?
It wasn't Bachan.
It was Obachan, which is formal. And no Japanese American child has ever called their grandma Obachan. That's like for old ladies. That's what you Obasans or Obachan. Those are like the old people. Like those are your formal family friends or formal old ladies in, at church or old ladies in the community center. But you call your grandma and your grandpa Bachan and Jichan. I never heard anyone add the O in front of it for their family because it's
for their
family.
own family.
That's why it's informal. It's your family. And so that they got that wrong shows that they are Asian. And once again, the Chinese slant to it. They did not figure that out. It just like, as soon as I heard him, like, I was like, dude, what? You didn't do, I thought this was Asian representation. You didn't do your research. What? I was so mad because it was so simple, but but that something that simple was something that they overlooked and therefore showed me that they didn't care. At least not that, like, they did not care in the way that they, anyway, yeah, that just made me mad. Sorry. That's what do you call, what is my famous nickname?
Yeah. Angry Japanese American man.
That came out when the little girl said, Obachan.
Obachan.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, that's not how you say it.
I mean, I understand where your frustration with beef or your beef with beef comes from. Yeah, I mean, I think the other issue for me is, as far as like Asian representation or whatever, and like Asian people in media is, they're playing the characters that they're playing or the roles that they get into. I mean, I don't know, like for beef specifically, it could have been played by a white person. Could have been played by any person.
I think that's what they were excited about, though. The Asian people were excited because it wasn't an Asian like it didn't
Right, a
it wasn't
stereotypical.
stereotypically Asian, right? It didn't have the thing where it's family, family piety, all that kind of,
Sure.
that kind of stuff. It wasn't the traditional, only an Asian could have this
Traditional.
conflict kind of thing. Yeah,
Tradition.
all
Yeah.
that stuff.
So
So that's why people were excited about it for, because it could have been, it didn't have to be. But the thing is that's the other thing that bothered me was like, yeah, but there are not many Asian people that act like that. Like, so,
I mean,
like,
yeah, Asian people are bad drivers, sure, but like
but yeah, the whole, I don't know.
maybe, oh my gosh, maybe the whole thing was just like a meta deconstructing on the whole stereotype of Asians being bad drivers.
That'd be
maybe,
awesome.
maybe that was the whole thing. Oh,
At least,
gosh.
actually, that's what I first thought it was going to
Honestly,
be.
that would have been real. That would be. I would have loved that. If that was it, I would be down.
They were just,
That'd be really
the whole time they were all bad drivers.
actually just
everyone was honking
kidding.
at them.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Yeah, that would have been funny.
I don't know. No, that one, that was it was watchable,
It was watchable,
but there were parts that annoyed me
there were a lot of parts that just disturbed me.
because why? Because of
Well,
the desire to always look good. But see, okay, so
Well, I
I'll
mean,
give you
okay.
this. It's like one last thing. So
yeah,
it's particularly Japanese people. This is
Yeah.
this is a weird thing because like Japanese, like, and this is like, this is from old school Japan Japanese, right? It's like
Right.
everyone in Japan is polite, right?
yes,
But that's just the public face. Everyone knows that that's the public face of Japanese people.
Yes.
They're not like that. There's like the face you present to people. There's
Yeah.
a face you present to family, to direct family, wider family. There's
there are
there
layers.
are layers of and how you act differently and in the Western world that would be considered being fake, right? Because
Yes.
you're
Oh, yeah,
showing
yeah.
you're showing different sides of you and you have to be there's only one authentic you,
Yeah, and you have to
and
be
you have
that
to
at all
be that
time.
at all times. But as a Japanese person, it was never explicitly described this way, but you did act differently because not for the reasons of being inauthentic, but it's
Right,
like
you're not being deceptive.
No, but you have a broader responsibility
Yeah.
for how you act.
Yeah,
Right? You have you're not just representing yourself. You are
Right.
reflecting on your family, and the Western people hate that, right? Like I'm not speaking for, but what you do reflects on your family.
yeah.
And like I said, the Western people hate that, right? That's like, I need to be me. I'm my own person. And so, but you are.
Yeah, that's right. You can be your own person.
Yes.
You are your own person.
Yeah.
And no one's saying that you aren't.
Yeah. But like, there's an aspect of like, we'd rather you not do certain things because it would reflect badly on us. But if you're
Yeah.
going to go off and do it, like at some point, it's like, okay, you're going to do it. But at some point, yes, you are on your own. But especially when you're younger or part of a family, considered part of a family, you live within those some set of boundaries so that
Yeah.
you can get along in that family.
Yeah.
And so, but that's just not a Western thing. And that was, that I think it kind of like there was kind of a conflict there in beef. Like
Yeah.
sometimes they acted like they were part of they didn't use that framing of having different faces as something that you could actually pull off for a reason.
Right.
It was always framed as if you weren't yourself, then you were being inauthentic.
Yeah.
Like if you
Oh, yeah.
act differently at church than you act somewhere else, then you are fake.
yeah.
But you in a church setting, you do act differently and that's not fake. It's just adhering to a norm so that you can get along for a bigger purpose.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you're being fake or you're not being yourself. That's just like you said.
In context, you act differently, and that's
Yes.
not being fake. That's just like adhering to norms that make society work.
Yes.
And so, but that's just like I keep saying, that's just anti-Western. Like you just have to be whoever you are at all times. Like you just said, you have to be yourself at all times,
Yeah.
or else that's not authentic and and there, and that's just the way you have to be.
Yeah.
But that's not how I am. Anyway. I'm often an angry Japanese American man, but
yeah,
but that's just one facet of me, and I don't always show
Right.
it. Right? I don't
Yeah.
always have to show it. It's just certain
yeah.
things that trigger it.
I mean, yeah, I grew up as a Gen Z in the digital world, with everybody on social media, everybody claiming to be real, everybody claiming that like taking pictures of themselves with no makeup and calling it real. Like just there's always been a battle of authenticity. There's always been it's always about who's the most authentic. It's not necessarily about like who's the better looking. I mean, sure, that might be an aspect of it, but it's always been who's the most real, who's the bravest to put themselves out there and like be themselves or be the best version of yourselves. Like it's yeah, no, I agree with you. Western civilization and Western media is very much obsessed with being perceived, but like in a way that like suits you and only you and all these things. It's yeah. Narcissistic. That's what that's what I had said before, and that is my backing evidence for that.
Awesome. All right.
Yay.
That was a long discussion.
Oh yeah, we went off.
We went off. That's okay. That's what we do. That's
what we do.
We're figuring it out. I know that's not going to be the name of the thing, but
no, it's not.
I don't know what we're going to name this thing, but yeah, no, that was once again a good conversation about random stuff,
all sorts
pop
of random
culture, art and tech. We did what we said we were going to do. We are sticking to that.
We are being consistent. Yes, we've got it. We're
awesome.
Good.
Yeah, and it gets us into interesting places.
Yes. Wow. And at the end, we're good.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Emmy.
Thanks, Ed.